We've talked about the coaching staff, the front office. Now let's get to the roster. The one thing that I would say is Kevin Stefanski hired a much better group of players than pretty much any other coaching regime did.
Yeah, he's got a lot of talent on this roster. I mean, this was a team that a lot of us were predicting. You know, I think I said 10-6, and that felt pessimistic and for some people. You know, 8-8, 9-7. So there's a lot of talent on this roster. You assume Odell Beckham's going to be back, Jarvis Landry. You hope Baker Mayfield is going to be rehabbed. Defensively, we mentioned some guys that they have over there. So the talent is there for this team to win right away, which is a good thing. You don't have to completely overhaul things. Hopefully you don't have to find your quarterback anytime soon. So he's in a really good spot to win football games with some kind of minor adjustments here and there.
When you look at the biggest need, do you agree it's the offensive? I mean, there could be 3 new offensive linemen legitimate. There probably should be 3 new offensive linemen.
You got to figure out your tackle position. You have to get a left tackle. I mean, I'd prefer you go through the draft to get your left tackle because you want a guy that's going to be there for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, maybe the next Joe Thomas.
If you get real lucky.
I don't know if you're going to find a first ballot Hall of Famer, but you want to get that position fixed. You got to figure out what you're doing at right tackle. If you have a guy that can play there, if you need to fix it there. Maybe you can fudge it a little at right guard again if you like Wyatt Teller or you like Eric Kush and you strengthen those other 2 spots. But there should probably be at least 2 new starters, like you said, maybe 3 new starters on that line.
You look at the skill positions, and they're in pretty good shape. I mean, you could say a third wide receiver, but my guess is the way the 49ers and Vikings offense rolls, you're probably looking for a tight end and you can probably find them 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah, I think you want a reliable tight end. You know, they had Darren Fells here who went to Houston and was really good. It would be nice to kind of have him back, but of course that's not going to happen. David Njoku, I don't know. He maybe gets a new life with this regime because Andrew Berry was involved in trading up to draft him, but he's still got to prove it. So yeah, they've got to fix that tight end position. As far as the 3rd receiver, I think it depends on what happens with Kareem Hunt. If he stays in line and they decide that he's worth keeping around, I think he kind of is your 3rd receiver because he's so good, and you've already got Nick Chubb, of course, in the backfield. I think that's how you kind of view Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. Tight end plays an important role. I mean, and the one thing about Njoku, if he's going to be the guy, you better start blocking a little bit better. And you can do that. It's not a matter of, blocking is a lot of will.
and if you're not going to be a good blocker, you better catch the ball consistently. You better be a Travis Kelce type of player. And David Njoku hasn't been that. I mean, we're watching open parts of practice for 20 or 30 minutes during the season, and he's dropping balls against air. You can't do that. You've got to consistently catch the football and make plays down the field. And yeah, he's got to be a better blocker. But if he doesn't improve there, he better improve those hands.
You flip sides, the defensive side of the ball. What are some areas that concern you? Obviously, you got to figure out the linebacker. And I mean, the only thing that doesn't concern you probably is the front.
Yeah, I think you like the front. Now, Olivier Vernon is due $15 million this year. That's a lot of money. He's a free agent after this year, but you have to wonder if maybe they would renegotiate that. If they cut him, it doesn't cost him anything. I don't know that they would cut him because I think he had a nice season when he was healthy, but this is also a guy that hasn't played a full season in a couple of years. So they have a decision to make there. The secondary, you like your corners. They're young. Denzel Ward had a really good year last year when he was healthy, but your safety position is really up for grabs. You've got Sheldrick Redwine, who was brought here by, let's be honest, a Miami guy, Alonzo Highsmith. Demarius Randall is headed for free agency. Morgan Burnett is a free agent coming off an Achilles tear. So a lot of decisions to make there. And you've got to decide how you feel about Mack Wilson. Do you like Mack Wilson to take over for Christian Kirksey? I thought he was good in spots. I thought he was still very raw. Sheldon Richardson joked that he's got to stop running into him in the run game, and I kind of went back and watched a little bit, and yeah, sometimes he would get out of position and run into one of his defensive linemen. So he's still a raw guy who's got some talent. So they just have to make some decisions there. And what if a guy like Isaiah Simmons is there at number 10? I mean, kind of that linebacker hybrid safety guy. That could change maybe your approach at that linebacker position too.
And that's a guy that, won the defensive award. He's defensive player of the year in football. And there are several mock drafts that say he would be available. Now that's probably going to change when he gets to the combine and runs like a 4.3 because that's allegedly what he runs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how they approach that because I know Browns fans are saying you got to take a tackle at 10. You got to take a tackle at 10, but sometimes that player that's there who's not maybe a need is so good, you can't pass him up. That would be a really interesting situation.
Yeah, I would agree. If a guy that you think can make a huge impact on the defense is available at 10, this defense isn't good enough to ignore him. And it is the other thing to keep in mind, so that people don't get all fired up. It is supposed to be a really deep draft for offensive linemen, especially tackles.
Yeah, and that's what they have to weigh. Look, they could look at that and say, you know what, everybody else wants this kid, let's trade away. I hope they wouldn't do that. I hope they would just take the really talented player instead. But you can't get too caught up in drafting for need, because that's when you end up drafting guys that maybe aren't as good as you thought, and you look back 3 or 4 years down the road and you're like, man, they could have had this guy, but instead they took this guy who's good. This guy's great. I wish they would have taken him.
You're giving me horrible analytics flashbacks of accumulating draft picks. That's why I was screaming. Free agents as well. There's some decisions. Schobert, Kirksey, you mentioned. Do you get any sense of guys that you think they definitely want back, or is it new regime, new way of thinking?
I mean, I think Joe Schobert's the big winner in this. I think the old regime was probably more than willing to move on from him. But now you've got these guys coming back. Andrew Berry, again, was involved in that pick. He's a guy that helped pick Joe Schobert, and he's blossomed into a guy who was a Pro Bowler. Probably could have been a Pro Bowler this year, but didn't make it. I think he was an alternate. I think this regime is going to be more willing to pay Joe Schobert than the previous regime would have been. So I think he's the big winner. Kirksey, he's really expensive. And granted, it was the Sashi Brown regime that extended him, but he's expensive. It doesn't cost much to move on from him. He's finished the last 2 seasons on IR. I think probably the string has run out on Kirksey.
Yeah, Schobert is a guy, it seems like you plug him into a system, and unless you're asking him to be Superman and play at the line of scrimmage and 15 yards back from the line of scrimmage, he seems to be able to find a way to be by the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's not your traditional middle linebacker. He's not going to be Ray Lewis out there, but he is a guy that can make some plays, has a knack for getting to the football. His athleticism is a big reason that got him drafted here, and I think it's a big reason why he'll probably end up staying here now that this new regime has taken over.